I have lived long enough to know that the smallest sounds can carry the weight of a death sentence. But the dry, metallic click echoing from the other side of my bedroom door tonight is unlike any sound I've heard in 74 years. It is sharp, final, the sound of a bolt sliding into place on a rusted garden shed, not the closing of a mother's sanctuary. Lindsay stands out there, her hand steady as she turns the key in the lock. And my hands? They are trembling beneath the thin cotton of my quilt, a rhythmic betrayal of my own nerves. "Mom, it's just for tonight." Her voice drifts through the wood, flat and horrifyingly calm. I hear the jingle of keys, my keys being tucked into her coat pocket, a sound of reclamation, as if they had always belonged to her. "You've been getting so confused after sundown. I can't have you wandering off and breaking a hip in the dark." At 74, I have been fed many varieties of lies, but none delivered with such clinical, cruel tenderness. I sit motionless on the edge of the mattress, tracing the sound of her footsteps as they retreat down the hallway. Each footfall is a hammer blow to the final, crumbling pillar of trust I held for my own flesh and blood. The house begins its nightly chorus of groans. The oak beams shift as the temperature plunges, letting out cracks like breaking bone. Tom and I laid these floorboards ourselves. I remember the smell of sawdust and the fire in our lungs as we hauled the timber. My palms were a map of blisters and calluses then, but my heart was swollen with pride. We planted the first saplings in this dirt with the hope they would shade our grandchildren. But tonight, this house is no longer mine. It has transmuted into a cell, smelling of lemon polish, old wood, and a daughter's treachery. I turn my gaze to the window. The porch light flickers, casting skeletal shadows of the great elm across the glass. Tom loved that tree. Every spring, he would stand on the ladder, meticulously thinning the lower canopy. "You take care of the tree, Eleanor," he'd say, wiping sweat from his brow, "and the tree will take care of you." I wonder if he'd say the same about children. I stand, my knees popping with a sound like dry twigs, a pathetic protest of the spirit. I reach for the brass knob and twist. It doesn't budge. A cold, suffocating tide rises in my chest. I press my ear against the wood, straining for any vibration from the living room. Then, Gary's voice. Low, gravelly, soaked in calculation. "The back acreage. If we close before July, the debts vanish. Your mother, she doesn't need all that space anyway. A suite at the assisted living center is more than enough. It's for her own safety." The blood in my veins turns to slush. That land is Tom's sweat. It is the memory of every dawn we spent taming the wild grass. They don't just want to lock me away, they want to pave over my soul. I catch my reflection in the silvered glass of the vanity. Under the amber glow of the nightlight, the creases on my forehead look like fissures in a drought-stricken earth. My eyes, once Tom's greatest pride, look clouded, haunted by a fog I cannot shake. Am I truly losing it? Are the dizzy spells of the past weeks the slow rot of my mind? Or something else? I think back to the dinner Lindsay brought me. A pale, watery soup and a single slice of dry toast. "Keep it light, Mom," she'd say. "Your stomach can't handle the heavy stuff." But every time I eat her care, the fog thickens. My limbs feel like lead, and the shadows in the corner begin to twist into shapes that aren't there. She calls it sundowning. She tells me my brain is simply aging, flickering out like a dying bulb as the sun dips below the horizon. I believed her. I leaned into the lie because it was easier than the truth. I sink to the floorboards, my bony shoulders shaking. In the darkness of this locked room, I feel like a ruin waiting for the wrecking ball. I miss Tom. I miss the way his hand would enclose mine, grounding me when the world felt too fast. Now, there is no hand. Only the shadows and the poisonous whispers of my children counting the days until my heart stops so they can carve up the spoils. But then a sound. Not the heavy thud of Gary's boots or the sharp clack of Lindsay's heels. A soft, rhythmic scratching at the bottom of the door. A sliver of white paper slides through the gap. I scramble for it, my fingers fumbling. Under the pale moonlight, the slanted, hurried script comes into focus. Jima, don't sleep. Wait for me. I'm bringing the truth. Haley, my granddaughter, the one with the medical books and Tom's unwavering eyes. My heart skips a beat, a jagged rhythm of hope. During these days of my captivity, Haley has looked at me with a gaze that felt like a probe, observing me not as a senile grandmother, but as a patient with a misdiagnosis. I crush the note in my palm. The chill in the room suddenly feels less biting. I look out at the elm tree, its leaves shimmering in the wind like 1,000 silver coins. I am not confused, Lindsay, I whisper into the dark, my voice a rusted blade, sharp and dangerous. I am being starved, and this land, this house, we are far from finished. Tonight, the click of that lock was meant to sever me from the world, but it has unwittingly awakened something Lindsay underestimated. The survival instinct of a woman who built an empire out of dirt and grit. The voices in the living room fade. Silence descends, heavy and expectant. But in my mind, the gears are finally turning. I remember the strange metallic tang in the tea, the way the light is always dimmed, just so. The way Lindsay avoids my eyes when she speaks of my condition. I lie back on the bed, but I do not close my eyes. I wait. I wait for Haley. I wait for the truth she promised to carry through the dark. Behind this locked door, the war for Eleanor Thorne has begun. I am not just an old woman fading away. I am the guardian of this soil, and I will not let my daughter's medical lies bury the truth beneath the roots of my husband's tree. The darkness is no longer my enemy. It is my ally, hiding the fire that is returning to my eyes. The darkness in the locked room had turned viscous, heavy with the cold sting of abandonment. I lay there, eyes fixed on the ceiling where ghost light from the porch filtered through the elm branches, twisting into jagged, distorted shapes. My head felt leaden, haunted by a persistent gray fog that made me forget, for fleeting seconds, where I was or why I was, a prisoner in my own sanctuary. Then, a sound, faint, metallic. The lock groaned softly, a nearly imperceptible sigh, and a razor-thin sliver of light from the hallway sliced through the gloom. Jima. Haley's slight silhouette slipped into the room. She shut the door with a frantic click, her breath coming in ragged bursts as if she had just crossed a battlefield. She hurried to the bedside. As the pale moonlight struck her face, I saw that her eyes were rimmed with red. "Haley," I croaked, my voice sounding like dry sand grinding in my throat. "How did you get in? Your mother." I swiped the spare key from her dresser, she whispered, sinking onto the edge of the mattress. She took my hand in hers, the hands of a future doctor trembling with nerves, yet radiating a warmth that felt like a lifeline. She froze, She lifted my hand close to her eyes, turning it over and over in the moonlight. Gima, what happened to your arms? I looked down. Mottled bruises, shades of deep plum and sickly yellow, were scattered across my skin as thin and translucent as parchment. I'm just old, sweetheart. A little bump here and there and I turn blue. It's nothing. No. Gima, Haley interrupted, her voice snapping from grief to the clinical sharp-edged steel of someone seeing a medical truth. Bruising is common, but these aren't accidental. And look at your nails. She traced her thumb over my fingernails. They're concave, spoon-shaped, brittle, with white ridges. This isn't aging. This is a severe deficiency of minerals and nutrients. Tell me the truth. What is Mom feeding you? I hesitated, the memory of those bland, hollow meals flickering back. Just vegetable broth, white bread, some porridge now and then. Lindsay says my stomach is too weak for protein. She says anything heavy will make me sick. Haley's grip tightened, her eyes flashing with a sudden, sharp fury. Broth and white bread? She's starving your cells. Do you know why you've been dizzy? Why you're seeing shadows and forgetting things? It's an acute deficiency of B vitamins and iron. When the brain doesn't get fuel from proteins and good fats, it falls into a brain fog. She's doing this on purpose to make you weak, to make you believe you're truly losing your mind. Her words hit me like a bucket of ice water, instantly clearing a path through the haze in my head. The fainting spells, the instability I felt when standing what Lindsay called vestibular decline, suddenly had a new name: premeditated starvation. But your mother, she's a doctor, I whispered, the heartbreak sharper than the hunger. That's exactly why she knows how to do it without leaving a trace, Haley said, her voice catching. She's weaponizing her knowledge to sign your mental death warrant. She wants you to believe you're broken so she can have full control over this land. I looked out the window, where the elm tree stood as a silent sentinel in the night. A cold shiver raced down my spine, but it wasn't fear this time. It was an awakening. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't senile. I was merely a tree, being systematically drained of its sap at the roots by an invisible hand. Haley pulled a small pouch of nuts and a carton of milk from her coat pocket. Eat this. From now on, I'm smuggling real food to you. You have to keep playing the part of the frail old woman for Mom. But inside, we're going to rebuild your blood and your memory. I've already started a health log for you. We're going to use medicine to prove you're perfectly sane. I took the milk from her, my skeletal hands steadier now. A strange, primal strength began to radiate from my chest to my fingertips. I understand, Haley, I said, my gaze regaining the sharpness of the woman who had once cleared this land by her husband's side. I will eat. I will get strong. If she wants a senile mother, I'll show her the most brilliant, crazy woman she's ever met. Haley looked at me, a tight, determined smile on her lips. Tonight, behind a locked door, there wasn't just a discarded old woman. A secret alliance had been forged between experience and science, between the cherished past and the breathing future. Lindsay thought she had buried me in the darkness of dementia. She didn't realize that in that very darkness, Haley had struck a match. And once the truth is exposed under a clinical lens, no lie can survive the light. I drank the milk, the cool sweetness sliding down my throat like a revival tonic. I watched the girl slip back into the hall, hearing the faint click as she locked the door to hide her tracks. I smiled. In this war, I was no longer alone. The following night, the house fell into an unnatural silence, the kind of stillness that makes you feel a storm is gathering strength behind the wallpaper. I sat frozen in the dark, my spine pressed against the cold wood of the bedroom door, straining to catch even the faintest vibration from the living room. My world was pitch black. Lindsay had removed the hallway bulb, leaving only a flickering, anemic nightlight in my room. Every time my eyes strayed to the corners, the shadows seemed to warp and stretch like black bile. My heart hammered against my ribs, a primal, baseless panic clawing at my chest. Then, a murmur of voices bled through the gap at the floor. Gary. His voice was oily, thick with greed. "Everything's set, Lindsay. The broker says that back acreage is a gold mine. If we sign by next week, we'll have enough to close on the condo downtown and wipe the slate clean with the creditors." "And my mother?" Lindsay's voice sliced through the air, sharp and devoid of hesitation. "She won't leave. That tree, that land. She treats them like her own heart would. That's why Serene Meadows is the best move." Gary let out a dry chuckle. "Your medical file on her dementia is ironclad. A confused old woman seeing demons in the dark, incapable of self-care. She's a liability to her own assets. We move her in next Wednesday. Once she's in that home, the land is ours to carve." A wave of vertigo hit me so hard I had to white-knuckle the brass doorknob to keep from collapsing. The floor tilted beneath my feet. Those shadows in the corners suddenly surged forward, long, spindly fingers reaching to choke the breath from me. I gasped, cold sweat slicking my skin. Maybe Lindsay is right. Maybe I am finally unraveling. "Jima! Jima, breathe! Look at me!" Haley's whisper hissed right in my ear. She had slipped in like a ghost, her hands gripping my shoulders, forcing my gaze away from the void. "Don't look at the dark. Look at me," she commanded softly. She pulled a small, tactical flashlight from her pocket. Click! A beam of brilliant white light lanced across the room. The demons vanished instantly, revealing nothing but a coat rack and a dusty set of curtains. I panted, my voice a broken rasp. "Haley, I saw them. I really saw them. Your mother is right. I've lost it. I can't protect your grandfather's land like this." "You aren't crazy." Haley's voice was fierce. She pressed me into a chair, her fingers finding the pulse at my wrist. "Listen to me. What you just felt, medicine calls it sundowning. It happens when the light drops too fast for an aging brain to process. When the brain is starved of light, neurotransmitters misfire. It triggers panic, tachycardia, and visual hallucinations. Mom knows this. That's why she keeps the lights off. She's intentionally triggering your terror to build a paper trail for that damn dementia diagnosis." I looked at Haley, my chest still heaving. "Sundowning? So, the things I saw, they weren't real? They are a physiological reflex to light deprivation." "Jima," Haley said, her eyes burning with a protective rage. "Mom is weaponizing the dark to strip you of your personhood. That dizzy spell? It was bad news, combined with an oxygen dip from the panic. You aren't losing your mind. You're trapped in a biological snare, she laid out. I leaned my head back against the chair, taking a slow, deep breath. For the first time, the darkness didn't feel predatory. It felt small. I felt a cold, crystalline contempt for the daughter I had once cherished. She didn't just want the soil. She wanted to hollow out her mother's soul with clinical precision. Next Wednesday, I whispered. They want to take me away. Next Wednesday. Haley squeezed my hands, her voice hardening into steel. We don't have much time, but now you know the truth. Every time you feel that fear, remember, it's just the light, not your mind. I'll find a way to bring more light in here. We won't let them put you in that cage. I looked toward the crack under the door, where Gary and Lindsay were still laughing about a luxury future built on the ruins of my life. A granite cold resolve began to encrust my heart. Fine, Haley, I said, my voice regaining a terrifyingly calm clarity. If she wants to use medicine to bury me in the dark, then you and I will use medicine to drag her into the light. Next Wednesday won't be the day I leave. It will be the day she pays. In the silence of that room, I was no longer a withered woman waiting for the end. Thanks to Haley, I understood that the monster I faced wasn't insanity, it was human greed, and I would never let them touch a single inch of Tom's earth. The next morning, a weak sun filtered through the dust motes on the window, but it carried no warmth. The door creaked open, and Lindsay stepped in, carrying a tray. She wore a smile, that sterile, industrial smile she usually reserved for the patients at her clinic. Breakfast is served, Mom. Pureed oatmeal and some chamomile tea. You need to keep it light to reduce the pressure on your brain, Lindsay said, setting the tray down with a softness that felt like an insult. I looked at the plate. It was pale, watery, and utterly lifeless. For a month, my entire world had been reduced to this. Lindsay explained that sugar and animal proteins would spike my blood pressure and trigger delirious episodes. I had believed her implicitly until Haley arrived. Leave it, dear. I'll eat in a bit, I murmured, keeping my voice thin and reedy, letting my eyes go vacant as if staring at something far beyond the walls. Make sure you finish it all. Gary and I have to head out to handle some paperwork regarding the land, Lindsay said, patting my hand. Her touch was clinical and cold. She walked out, and the click of the lock echoed a sharp reminder that I was still a prisoner. The moment their car faded into the distance, Haley appeared at the window. She slipped through the frame we had surreptitiously unlocked the night before. Her face was flushed from running, but her eyes were electric. Jima, don't touch that sludge, Haley hissed. She moved with surgical efficiency, dumping the porridge into the sink and rinsing it away to erase the evidence. From the depths of her oversized coat pocket, she pulled out a hard-boiled egg, still warm, and a handful of almonds. Eat this, she said, peeling the egg for me. Do you know why she's forcing you onto broth and white bread? They're empty carbohydrates. They spike your blood sugar and then let it crash, leaving you exhausted and lethargic. But more importantly, she's stripping away your B vitamins, especially B12 and B1, found in proteins and whole grains. I chewed the egg, the rich yolk feeling like a revelation on my tongue, waking up senses that had been dormant for weeks. B12 deficiency creates a temporary neurological decay, Haley continued, her voice professional yet filled with a fierce intimacy. It causes pseudo-dementia, It makes you forget names, lose your focus, and drift. Mom is using a diet to write a medical death sentence without using a single drop of poison. If she starves your brain long enough, you'll start to believe you're actually senile. I stared at the egg in my hand, stunned. Something so simple was my shield against my daughter's dark design. Eat the nuts too. They have the healthy fats your brain membranes crave, Haley urged. Mom tells you fat is the enemy, but your brain is made of it. She is literally drying out your mind. Over the next few days, a perfect theater took place. Every time Lindsay brought a tray, I pretended to finish it, only to hide the food in a secret trash bag that Haley would smuggle out at night. Instead, I feasted on what Haley brought: eggs, nuts, and small capsules of fish oil. The transformation was miraculous. The gray fog in my mind began to dissipate like mist under a morning sun. The dizziness that used to hit when I stood up vanished. My memory sharpened into a blade. I could recall the exact placement of every brick Tom had laid and the serial numbers on the land deeds Gary was so hungry for. When I looked in the mirror, my eyes were no longer clouded. They were clear, the eyes of a woman who held the truth. Whenever Lindsay came in and asked, "How are we feeling, Mom?" I would narrow my eyes and play the part. I'd ask with a dazed, trembling voice, "What day is it, dear? I think Tom is just getting home from work, isn't he?" Lindsay would smile, a smug look of satisfaction crossing her face. She had no idea that behind that vacant mask, my brain was racing at the speed of a sprinter. I was counting the hours. I was no longer a starved old woman. Thanks to Haley's fuel, I was armoring myself for the final battle to protect my land. My daughter thought she was nursing a ghost. In reality, she was feeding her most formidable enemy. Time in this locked chamber no longer moves by the ticking of a clock, but by the sluggish crawl of sunlight across the floorboards and the deepening bruises of the shadows. Since the night Haley brought me back from the brink, I have realized that survival requires more than just smuggling an egg or a carton of milk. It requires me to become the greatest grifter ever to live under this roof. Lindsay visits more frequently now. She doesn't just bring food. She brings sheaves of legal papers, condescending memory tests, and a gaze dripping with a staged, superior pity. For our plan to work, I must inhabit the role of a woman fading into dust. I've learned to let my eyes go vacant, to break my sentences midair, and to let my hand tremble as I lift a silver spoon. "Mom, how are we feeling today?" Lindsay asks, her fingers fluttering over a folder from the assisted living facility. I look at her, letting my lips twitch several times before uttering a nonsensical fragment. "Tom, he said he'd be home early to trim the elm. Have you seen him?" A flash of light ignites in Lindsay's eyes, not compassion, but triumph. She scribbles something into her personal notebook. "Dad has been gone a long time, Mom. You forgot again. Don't worry. In a few days, we're taking you to a place with 24-hour care. You won't be so confused there." The moment the door slams and the lock clicks, I shed the mask of the dotard. My heart thunders against my ribs, fueled by a volatile mix of fury and fear. Rage sends blood surging to my brain, making my ears ring. In that instant, Haley slips through the window. Seeing me gasping for air, she rushes to my side. "Jima, look at me. Don't let the anger take the wheel," Haley whispers, her voice acting as an anchor in the storm. She produces a small stopwatch and a leather-bound logbook, black as obsidian. Jima, Mom is using psychological stress to overstimulate your sympathetic nervous system. When she talks about taking you away, your body floods with cortisol and adrenaline. If you don't control it, it triggers real heart arrhythmias and behavioral outbursts. That's exactly what she wants to document in her files. Haley takes my hand, pressing 2 fingers against my pulse. Listen to me. We are going to practice biological resistance. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, and exhale slowly for 8. We must force your heart rate down. Don't let her win by letting her scare you into a frenzy. I close my eyes and follow her lead. My breath is jagged at first, but slowly, the frantic drumming in my chest subsides. Calm returns like a cool stream flowing through scorched veins. Perfect, Haley murmurs, her pen beginning to fly across the pages of her log. Medicine isn't just pills, Jima. It's the understanding of one's own self. I'm building a counter-medical record here. I look at the notebook. Haley has divided it into 2 columns. On one side, the things Lindsay is inflicting: darkness, empty carbohydrates, isolation. On the other, the intervention: light therapy, proteins, healthy fats, and neurological regulation exercises. Look at these numbers, Haley points. The day I started, your resting heart rate was 95, your skin was dehydrated, and your pupillary reflex was sluggish. After 3 days of secret B12, omega 3 seconds, and breathwork, you're stable at 72. Your short-term memory has fully recovered. Can you repeat the names of the 3 documents Gary mentioned last night? I offer a sharp, knowing smile. The land deed transfer, the power of attorney for guardianship, and the voluntary admission form. Haley taps the mattress in quiet triumph. Exactly. You see, your brain is like a fallow field. Give it water and the right nutrients, and it blooms again. This book is our weapon. If she brings a lawyer, we bring this. This is medical evidence that you've been biologically gaslit into a state of pseudo-dementia. A chill runs down my spine. Biological gaslighting. The term is cold, clinical, but it perfectly describes the torture my own daughter is inflicting not with whips, but with shadows and nutrient deprivation. In the days that follow, Haley's secret logbook becomes our Bible. Every night, after Lindsay thinks I've succumbed to a stupor induced by her watery soups, Haley creeps in. She uses a flashlight to check the color of my gums, measures the hydration of my skin, and challenges me with complex puzzles. Mom believes in the medical data she's manufacturing on paper, Haley whispers while she writes. She's forgotten that the human body has a miraculous power to heal if given the right environment. I'm watching that recovery happen hour by hour. I feel it more than ever. Clarity is no longer an effort. It has become my natural state. I begin to watch Lindsay and Gary the way a predator watches its prey. I see the twitch in Gary's eye every time he checks his watch. The callous exhaustion in the way Lindsay prepares the sedatives she intends to force on me come Wednesday. Keep playing the part, Haley warns as she tucks the logbook into her hidden bag. Don't let them see the fire in your eyes. Keep your breath steady, even when Gary screams. You aren't a frail old woman. You are a fortress accumulating strength. I nod, my heart swelling with resolve. That logbook contains more than heart rates and blood pressures. It contains my granddaughter's faith and the truth of human integrity. Lindsay wants to use medicine to cage me in an asylum. I will use medicine through Haley's hands to strip away her mask of betrayal. That night, I listened to the wind rustling through the elm. I no longer see hallucinations or dancing shadows. I see the path forward. Haley's notebook has shown me that old age is sometimes just a lie told by others to profit from our silence. I breathe in for 4, hold for 4, and exhale slowly. My heart is as steady as a grandfather clock. I am ready. Wednesday is no longer an execution date. It is the day Haley's secret logbook will open, and the truth will burn as bright as the sun over the land Tom left for me. Lindsay and Gary think they are dealing with a mind in decay. They have no idea they are facing a woman who owns the medical record of her own victory. Monday morning. The air in my room is so thick with conspiracy that it feels like breathing silt. Lindsay left for work early, leaving Gary behind as my keeper. I know what's coming. His footsteps, heavy and rhythmic against the hallway floorboards, sound like the persistent pounding of a debt collector who has run out of patience. The door swings open without a knock. Gary strides in, clutching a folder bound in cheap plastic. He has discarded the mask of civility he wears whenever Lindsay is around. He looks at me with a raw, naked contempt, the kind of look reserved for a piece of broken furniture waiting for the scrap heap. "Listen up, old lady," Gary barks, tossing the folder onto my lap. His voice is a sandpaper rasp, reeking of stale tobacco and unearned authority. "Quit the act. Sign here, right where the X is. Do it, and you'll be moved to a place where they'll wait on you hand and foot. You won't have to worry about this dirt or that damn elm tree anymore." A few days ago, I would have trembled. I would have dissolved into tears and signed whatever he demanded just to escape the panic crushing my lungs. But today, I sit in a silence that is absolute. I feel my pulse begin to accelerate, a primal biological surge in the face of a threat. Inhale for 4. Hold for 4. Exhale for 8. Haley's voice echoes in my mind like a commanding officer. I reclaim my breath. I feel the cool air travel deep into my diaphragm, soothing my frayed nerves. As my heart rate stabilizes, a miracle occurs. I begin to observe Gary not as an oppressor, but as a clinical subject. "You hear me? Or has that brain of yours turned to mush?" Gary leans in, his face inches from mine, invading my space with the stench of his desperation. Instead of flinching, I lock my eyes onto his. At this proximity, I notice the details that fear used to hide. The vein in his temple is throbbing violently. His hand, gripping the ballpoint pen, has a faint, uncontrollable tremor. Beads of sweat are purling on his brow despite the morning chill. "Look, Jima," I tell myself in Haley's voice. He's the one who's breaking. Armed with what Haley taught me about the physiological markers of extreme stress, I realize Gary is in the grip of an acute anxiety disorder. He is cornered. He needs this signature to drown a debt. And my silence is the wall he's crashing into. This land. I say, my voice level, stripped of any tremor, it belongs to me and Tom. Why should I sign it over to you? Gary flinches. He wasn't expecting a senile woman to pose a question so lucid and direct. He stammers for a second before pivoting back to threats. "You think you have a choice. Lindsay already signed the competency papers. This signature is just a formality to grease the gears for the sale. If you don't sign, we'll dump you in the state ward anyway. Only you won't have a penny to your name. Now sign it, you senile bat." He shoves the pen into my hand. The force of his grip sends a jolt of pain through my wrist. A wave of lightheadedness washes over me as my blood pressure spikes. But I refuse to buckle. I take a deep, grounding breath, utilizing Haley's techniques to maintain absolute cognitive clarity. I realize that the more I maintain this clinical calm, the more I own the room. "I will not sign," I say, each word slow and forged in iron. "Not until I speak with my own attorney." Gary lets out a harsh, jagged laugh, but his eyes are frantic. "Attorney! Who's going to believe an old woman who sees ghosts in the dark? You can't even remember what you had for breakfast." "I remember perfectly," I say, staring into the dark pits of his pupils. "This morning, I flushed Lindsay's nutrient-free sludge down the drain. And I remember you stealing 2 blank checks from Tom's desk drawer last week." Gary recoils as if I had struck him. His face undergoes a violent transformation, turning from a mottled red to a ghostly, sickly pallor. It is the textbook image of psychological collapse upon being exposed. Thanks to Haley, I know that when a lie is shattered, the blood retreats to the internal organs in a flight response, leaving the face drained. You're talking crazy," he stammers, his voice cracking. "You're out of your mind." He snatches the folder from my lap and bolts for the door, retreating as if pursued by a phantom. The lock clicks again, but this time it doesn't sound like a sentence. It sounds like the snap of a trap closing on a panicked animal. I sit in the ensuing silence, feeling the oxygen pulse steadily through my veins. I am no longer a frail victim. Haley's guidance has provided me with armor that Gary's crude violence cannot pierce. He despises me because he thinks my mind is hollow. But he doesn't know that through proper maintenance and stillness, my intellect is sharper than it has been in years. I look out at the elm tree. Its leaves are vibrant green, enduring the wind with a stubborn grace. I am no different. Gary has revealed his greatest weakness: the terror of the debtor and the cowardice of the con man. Wednesday is looming. But today, I won a decisive battle. I did not let the psychological pressure fracture me. I held my breath, and I held my ground. "We shall see," I whisper to the shadows, "who the truly confused one in this house is." In Haley's logbook tonight, she will add a single line: "Subject maintained heart rate variability in the presence of a hostile stimulus." Psychological reflex. Flawless. And I know Tom's land still has a chance. Late Monday afternoon, the sky curdled into the color of heavy lead. I sat by the window, my eyes drifting toward the back garden. And then, my heart constricted. Gary was there, his heavy boots crushing the tender grass shoots that Tom had once so carefully nurtured. In his hand, he gripped a canister of spray paint, a violent, neon red. He loomed over the trunk of the ancient elm, the very soul of this land, and coldly sprayed a massive, jagged X onto its rugged bark. That X felt like a direct blade strike to my chest. He intended to fell it. He wanted to erase the final traces of Tom before discarding me forever. A wave of melancholy crashed over me. And, as always, as the shadows began to pool on the floor, my mind started to spin. The elm branches in the twilight warped and shifted, looking like emaciated arms clawing at the window pane. I recoiled, my breath coming in shallow gasps. The darkness, it was coming again to swallow me whole. Jima! Don't look out there. Look at me. Haley appeared, slipping through the window with the silent agility of a squirrel. But this time, she didn't come empty-handed. She pulled a strange, flat device from her backpack that emitted a piercing, brilliant, white-blue light. "What is that, sweetheart?" "A flashlight?" I whispered, my knuckles white as I gripped the arms of my chair. "It's not a regular light, Jima. This is light therapy," Haley said, placing the lamp on the vanity and angling the beam directly at my face. "I borrowed it from the university lab. Look into the light. Don't look at the darkness outside anymore." The intensity was so fierce I had to squint. But miraculously, within minutes, the suffocating tightness in my chest began to loosen. The rising tide of baseless panic retreated. "How do you feel?" Haley asked, her fingers adjusting the brightness. "It's strange. I feel sharper. Those shadows out there, they've stopped dancing." Haley nodded, her voice a mix of professional steel and raw empathy. "Jima, Mom is using the dark to imprison your brain. When you're deprived of blue light during the day and locked in gloom every evening, your body stops producing serotonin, the hormone that stabilizes your mood, and starts secreting melatonin at the wrong time. That's why you see phantoms. That's why you lose your way. This lamp mimics the sun. It reboots your circadian rhythm. It tells your brain, hey, it's not time to be afraid yet. It's still daylight." I stared into that crystalline white glow. All this time, Lindsay hadn't just been locking my door. She had been locking the light switch of my mind. She was a doctor. She knew exactly how long to keep me in the shadows until my biological clock shattered, turning a sane woman into a raving lunatic through nothing more than chemical imbalance. "Your mother. She is more sinister than I imagined." I breathed, my eyes never wavering from the lamp. "She is using medicine to turn her own mother into a hollow shell. And we are using that same medicine to pull you back," Haley said, taking my hand, a fierce resolve burning in her young eyes. "This light will keep you vigilant through the night. Tomorrow is the day. When the brain gets enough light, the hypothalamus regulates everything back into its proper orbit. You aren't senile, Jima. You were just being starved of light." I took a long, steady breath, feeling the clarity return, cell by cell. The light from Haley's lamp felt like a silver blade, severing the psychological chains Lindsay had used to shackle me in the dark. I looked back at the blood-red X on the elm. It was no longer a terrifying phantom. It was a piece of evidence, a crime scene, a reason to fight. "Haley, I see it now," I said, my voice no longer trembling, but ringing out as steady as a bronze bell. "I see everything clearly. Your mother's cruelty, Gary's greed, and the strength you've given me. Their darkness cannot scare me anymore." That night, thanks to Haley's light, I did not sleep in terror. I sat upright, sipping warm water and eating the almonds she left behind. I spent the hours auditing every memory, every figure, every inch of my soil. My circadian rhythm had been healed. My intellect had been shocked awake by that brilliant white beam. Lindsay thought she had consigned me to the sunset of my life. She didn't know that, thanks to Haley, I was preparing to greet the most radiant sunrise the day I would stand up to reclaim my land, my tree, and the justice I was owed. That red X would not be the end of the elm. It would be the end of the reign of greed in this house. Wednesday morning, the day of judgment. The sky outside is a bruised charcoal, but inside my chest, thanks to the brilliant light from Haley's lamp throughout the night, everything is heartbreakingly clear. Lindsay opens my door at 9 a.m. sharp. She is dressed in a crisp, professional suit, her face meticulously painted to hide her fatigue, but her eyes are as cold as ice. "Let's go, Mom." The lawyer and the representatives from Serene Meadows are waiting in the living room, she says, her voice devoid of any warmth. I let her lead me, my legs feigning a rhythmic tremble, my head bowed low. As we enter the living room, I see Gary sitting there with a man in a black suit, the attorney, and two burly orderlies. On the mahogany table lies a stack of documents: the land transfer deeds and the involuntary commitment forms. "Good morning, Mrs. Thorne," the attorney says, his voice dripping with reluctant pity. "We are here to finalize the healthcare and asset management transition as requested by your daughter." Lindsay begins to sniffle, dabbing a tissue at the corners of her eyes. My mother has deteriorated so quickly. She's constantly delusional, seeing things that aren't there at night, and sometimes she doesn't even know who she is. As a physician, it breaks my heart to confirm that she has lost all legal competency. "Do you have the medical records to support this?" the attorney asks. "I do," Lindsay says confidently, sliding a thick file across the table. "This is my log of her delirious episodes, her rapid weight loss, and her cognitive decline over the past month." Gary stands up, pen in hand, his eyes burning with greed. "Just sign it, old lady. Let's get you to a place where you can finally rest." I look at Lindsay. She meets my gaze with a triumphant smirk, the look of a person who has already labeled and discarded a piece of trash. In that exact moment, I pull my arm from her grip. I stand straight, my spine an unbending rod of iron. I take one deep, rhythmic breath, exactly as Haley taught me. "Lindsay," I speak. My voice does not tremble. It rings out with a resonant, commanding authority that makes everyone in the room freeze. "You say I am confused because I see demons in the dark? You say I have lost my mind because I cannot remember the date?" Lindsay scowls, her composure flickering. "Mom, you're having another episode. You see, gentlemen, I am not having an episode," I say, looking directly at the attorney. "I saw demons because my daughter systematically cut the lights to trigger sundowning in my brain. I am frail and gaunt because she fed me nothing but watery broth and white bread to strip my nervous system of vitamin B12. She needed me to be senile so she could sell the back acreage to pay off Gary's debts." The room falls into a deafening silence. Gary's face drains of color. He stammers, "What? What kind of crazy talk is this?" "It is not talk. It is a clinical fact," I say, reaching into my robe and pulling out Haley's black leather logbook. I slam it onto the table with a sharp thud. This is my health record, kept in secret by Haley, my granddaughter, a medical student. It shows my resting heart rate stabilized at 72 when I was properly fed. It shows my memory is flawless when given adequate light to regulate my circadian rhythm. And, more importantly, I flip to the final page. It contains the results of a blood panel Haley smuggled to a lab. It proves a toxic concentration of sedatives that Lindsay has been slipping into my tea. Lindsay turns a sickly shade of white, her knees buckling. Haley, she wouldn't. Haley steps out from behind the heavy curtains, standing firmly by my side. Her gaze is a flinty steel. I would, Mom. You taught me that medicine is for healing, but you used it to murder Grandma's mind. I recorded everything. Every physiological marker proves she is 100% lucid. Your files are nothing but medical fabrications. The attorney picks up the logbook, his expression darkening with every page he turns. He looks at Lindsay with a gaze of pure, professional disgust before closing her fraudulent file. Miss Thorne, Gary, the attorney says, his voice dropping to a glacial tone. Based on this evidence, not only is Mrs. Eleanor going nowhere, but you too are looking at a very real criminal investigation for elder abuse and asset fraud. Gary lets out a guttural roar and lunges toward me. But the two orderlies, the men who were supposed to take me away, step in his path like a stone wall. They aren't blind. They see a woman standing tall, with eyes burning with intellect, and a predator trembling with the cowardice of the exposed. I look at Lindsay. The daughter I once cherished is now just a pathetic, defeated stranger. That click of the lock that night, Lindsay. It didn't lock me in. I say, my voice calm, yet heavy with a grief that transcends anger. It only locked our relationship in the past. Now, get out of my house, both of you, immediately. Haley's medical truth didn't just save my land. It restored the dignity they tried to strip from my bones. I look out the window. The elm tree is still there, its blood-red X looking ridiculous under the brilliant morning sun. I have won, not with violence, but with the searing light of truth and the power of a clear mind. The living room, once a sanctuary of warm family memories, now held the suffocating air of an uncompromising tribunal. Lindsay was collapsed on the hardwood floor, her shoulders once held with such arrogant poise now racking with violent sobs. Her forged medical files lay scattered across the table like the pathetic debris of a clumsy lie. Gary stood frozen in the corner, his face drained of color, his eyes darting toward the two orderlies guarding the exit, like a trapped rat. I stepped toward the table, my hands now incredibly steady. I reached out and picked up the ring of house keys, the very ones Lindsay had coldly slipped into her pocket on that fateful night. The metallic jingle was bright and sharp, sounding like the final links of a shackle being shattered. Give them back to me, I said. My voice was calm, yet it carried the weight of 1,000 tons. Lindsay looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. But I felt no stir of pity in my chest. I saw only a stranger who had weaponized the frailty of old age for her own greed. Mom, I only did it because we're drowning in debt. I thought you'd be better cared for, she stammered, her final excuses sounding wretched and hollow. You didn't do it for me, Lindsay. You did it for yourself. I cut her off, my fingers tightening around the keys and the land deeds. You used medicine to turn me into a shadow. You intentionally manufactured nutritional voids and darkness so I would doubt my own sanity. That wasn't care. That was betrayal. I turned to the attorney, who had been observing the scene in stunned silence, clearly mesmerized by my clarity. Counselor, I want you to witness this. This house, this land, and the ancient elm tree outside all of it remains in my name. And as of this moment, I revoke any and all access Lindsay and Gary have to my assets. Gary opened his mouth to protest, but a single, razor-sharp look from me silenced him. I watched his total collapse, the shivering ruin of a parasite when its host suddenly turns formidable. "Haley," I called softly. She stepped forward, taking my hand. "Help me fling open every window in this house. I want the sunlight and the air to flood every corner. The shadows of these lies need to be swept clean." Haley nodded, moving swiftly to unlatch every window. A breeze surged in from the back garden, carrying the scent of damp earth, wild grass, and the intoxicating flavor of freedom. The house seemed to take a long, deep breath after weeks of being strangled. I stood in the center of the room, watching Lindsay pack her things in humiliating silence. Did it hurt? Yes, but the resolve within me was greater than the pain. A malignant tumor must be excised, or it kills the entire body. Today, with Haley's hand to steady the scalpel, I performed the most painful surgery of my life. I cut away the toxicity of my own child. "You have 1 hour to gather what is yours and leave," I said, pointing toward the front door, now standing wide open. "This land has no room for those who wish to fell its soul." As Lindsay and Gary trudged out with their suitcases, I didn't look back. I looked down at my palms, where the bruises were fading healed by the nutrient-rich meals Haley had smuggled in. I felt the reconnection between my mind and my body, a unity I thought I had lost forever. The front door stood open. No more click of the lock. No more captivity. There was only me, Haley, and Tom's sacred soil. I stepped onto the porch, filling my lungs with the crisp morning air. Medical truth had liberated me, but it was self-respect and courage that truly flung the doors of my life wide once more. I had reclaimed the keys to my house, but more importantly, I had reclaimed the keys to my own mind. Sunset bleeds across the back acreage, staining the young grass in shades of gold and draping the ancient elm in a magnificent amber shroud. The house is silent now, but it is no longer the deathly stillness of a prison. It is the profound peace that follows a violent storm. Haley and I walked slowly into the garden, my bare feet pressing against the cool, damp earth, a sensation of grounding strength I haven't felt in years. Beneath the elm, the glaring red X Gary sprayed remains, but it no longer incites fear. It is merely an obsolete scar on the body of a green giant. "Let me help you scrub it off, Jima," Haley says, reaching out with a damp cloth. "No, leave it." I stop her, my hand gently tracing the rough, ridged bark. "Let it stay to remind me of what we fought for, and to remind me that life is always more resilient than the judgments cast upon it." I stand there and take a long, deep breath. My chest expands, lungs flooding with oxygen, washing over every cell in my body like a cool spring. The lethargy and fog of the days I was starved have vanished completely. Because of Haley, I haven't just recovered physically, I have rediscovered the rhythm of my own soul. "You know, Jima," Haley says, resting her head on my shoulder, "Mom always said that aging was synonymous with fading away. But looking at you now, you're just like this elm. The deeper the roots, the steadier the heart." I smile, looking at my beloved granddaughter. "I've learned the most expensive lesson of my life, Haley. Your medicine could heal my body, but it was your love that resurrected my spirit." Lindsay tried to diagnose me into an ending. but you showed me a new beginning. At 74, I realized that true power does not lie in the deeds and titles I clutched so tightly in my hands. Power lies in the clarity to distinguish between love and manipulation. It lies in the refusal to believe the poisonous narratives that others impose upon us. Lindsay and Gary thought that by starving my body and locking me in the dark, they could strip me of my value. They were wrong. A person only truly becomes old and withered when they begin to believe they are useless. But with a heart illuminated by the truth, age is merely a number, and wrinkles are nothing more than the blueprints of endurance. Thank you, Haley, I whisper, the wind dancing through our hair. Thank you for letting me know I still have value, that this mind is still sharp enough to guard what your grandfather left behind. I look back at the house, where warm yellow light spills from the windows, flung wide to the world. Tonight, I will sleep deeply in my own bed, without the click of a lock, without the haunting dance of shadows. There will only be the rustle of elm leaves and absolute serenity. The land never lies. If you tend to it with love, it will shelter you. The human body is the same. When treated with respect and the light of knowledge, it becomes an unshakable fortress. I am Eleanor. I am 74 years old. I am perfectly lucid, and this is my land.